I've seen enough. Erika Kirk should be dragged into a police precinct for questioning. Like I said, you can show me the person who disagreed.
This story just took another explosive turn, because now Erika Kirk is reportedly going on the offensive, and not just online, but legally, after claims from a private investigator started spreading across the internet. And the timing of this move is exactly what's making people stop and pay attention. Because instead of letting the noise die down, she's allegedly choosing to fight back in a way that raises even more questions. Especially since those claims weren't just random gossip, they were tied to a narrative that's been building for weeks, one that suggests her public appearances after Charlie's passing didn't sit right with a growing number of viewers, and whether that perception is fair or completely off base is still being debated. But what's undeniable is how fast this situation escalated once legal action entered the picture. Because think about it, when someone decides to sue, it changes everything. It signals that the situation has crossed from internet talk into something much more serious. And now people aren't just asking what's true, they're asking why now? Why respond at this exact moment when conversations were already spreading? And why take action against a private investigator specifically? Because that detail alone has sparked another wave of curiosity, with people wondering what exactly was uncovered, what was said, and whether this lawsuit is about protecting reputation or shutting down a narrative before it grows even bigger. And that's the tension driving this story right now, because on one side you have Erika Kirk taking a strong stance, and on the other you have an internet that's already skeptical, already questioning, are now even more locked in trying to figure out what this legal move really means. And that's why this isn't just another update. It's a turning point, because once lawsuits enter the picture, the stakes go up, the attention increases, and the story shifts from speculation into something that could have real consequences. And right now, everyone is watching closely to see what comes next. Because whatever happens next could completely reshape how this entire situation is understood. So who is at the center of this lawsuit, and why does it matter so much? Because according to what's being discussed online, the legal action from Erika Kirk is reportedly aimed at a private investigator who had been digging into details surrounding Charlie's passing and her actions afterward. And that's where things start getting complicated. Because private investigators aren't random internet users. They're people hired to look deeper, to gather information, to verify or challenge narratives. And when someone like that becomes the target of a lawsuit, it immediately raises the stakes, because now people are asking what exactly was being uncovered that triggered such a strong response, and whether those findings, confirmed or not, were about to push the story into an entirely new direction. And this is where the controversy really intensifies. Because the claims linked to that investigator weren't small. They were tied to the idea that Erika's public behavior, especially during what some online users are calling a grief tour, didn't match what viewers expected, with critics pointing to speeches, appearances, and moments that felt, to them, unusually composed or even performative. And while it's important to remember that grief looks different for everyone and cannot be measured by a single standard, the perception created by repeated clips and discussions has kept the conversation alive, because once people start questioning authenticity, every new appearance gets analysed through that same lens. And that's exactly what's been happening here, with some viewers saying her tone felt controlled, others saying it felt strong and composed, and both sides continuing to debate without any definitive resolution. At the same time, the involvement of a private investigator adds another layer, because it suggests that this wasn't just a public debate. It may have been moving towards something more structured, more detailed, and potentially more impactful if findings had been released. And that's why the lawsuit is being interpreted in different ways, with some seeing it as a necessary step to stop misinformation and protect reputation, while others view it as an attempt to shut down deeper investigation before it gains traction. And without official confirmation of the full details, both interpretations continue to circulate, feeding into the larger narrative that this story is far from settled and may still have major developments ahead. But the real reason this situation exploded online isn't just the lawsuit, it's the claims tied to what people are calling the grief video moments, because this is where emotions, perception, and public judgment all collide at once, and that's exactly why Erika Kirk became the center of such a heated debate. Because after Charlie's passing, the multiple clips of her public appearances started circulating, and viewers began analyzing everything, from her tone to her expressions to the way she spoke about him. And while some people saw strength, composure, and faith, others interpreted the same moments very differently, describing her as unusually calm, detached, or even overly polished for someone going through that kind of loss. And that contrast in interpretation is what kept the conversation alive, because grief doesn't look the same for everyone. But when thousands of people are watching the same footage and coming to completely different conclusions, it creates a cycle of debate that doesn't easily fade. And then came the specific claims that pushed things even further, because online discussions started focusing on certain behind-the-scenes clips, with some users suggesting that what appeared on camera might have been more controlled than it seemed, even pointing to moments where she was preparing before going on stage. And again, none of these interpretations have been officially confirmed, but once that idea entered the conversation, it changed how people viewed everything else. Because now every speech, every emotional moment, every public appearance was being re-examined through that same lens. And that's how narratives evolve online, not through one piece of evidence, but through repeated exposure to similar clips that reinforce a particular perception over time. At the same time, there's a strong counter-argument that's just as important, with many people pushing back and saying this entire narrative is unfair, pointing out that public figures often have to maintain composure in front of large audiences, especially during difficult times, and that interpreting grief based on short video clips can lead to misleading conclusions. And that's why this part of the story is so polarizing, because it's not just about facts, it's about interpretation, emotion, and expectation. And right now, those three things are colliding in a way that keeps the conversation going, with no clear resolution in sight. And that's exactly why this controversy hasn't slowed down. It's personal, it's visible, and it's something people feel strongly about on both sides. But what really kept this controversy alive wasn't just the videos, it was the timing of everything that followed. Because once people started lining up events side by side, the internet began building its own narrative, and that's when even small details turned into major talking points, especially around Erika Kirk and what she was reportedly doing in the immediate aftermath of Charlie's passing. Because one of the claims that spread rapidly online involved a shopping trip that allegedly happened very soon after the incident, with users pointing to supposed receipts and posts as proof. And while none of that has been officially verified, the perception alone was enough to trigger strong reactions, because for many people, it wasn't about the purchase itself. It was about the timing and whether it aligned with what they personally expected from someone in that situation. And that's where the debate got even more intense, because expectations around grief are deeply personal. But when they play out in public, they get judged on a massive scale. And once that narrative took hold, everything else started getting pulled into it, because now people weren't just looking at one moment, they were connecting multiple events, from public appearances to statements to overall tone, trying to decide whether the behavior they were seeing felt consistent or not. And that's how suspicion grows online, not necessarily from one major piece of evidence, but from a series of moments that, when placed together, create a story that feels significant to viewers, even if it hasn't been formally proven. And at the same time, others pushed back hard, saying this is exactly how misinformation spreads, where unverified claims get amplified simply because they fit into an existing narrative people already believe. And that's why this part of the story is so divided, because it's built almost entirely on interpretation and timing rather than confirmed facts. But here's the key point. Whether these claims are accurate or not, the impact they've had is real, because they've shaped how a large portion of the audience now views the situation. And once that perception is established, it becomes incredibly difficult to reverse, especially when new details keep getting layered on top. And that's exactly why this story hasn't slowed down, because every new claim, verified or not, feeds into the same ongoing question people keep asking. Does everything really add up? Or is this just the internet connecting dots that were never meant to be connected in the first place? But the moment that really flipped everything and turned curiosity into full-blown suspicion was when Erika Kirk publicly warned people not to dig deeper into what happened, because whether that message was meant as a genuine caution or something else entirely, the internet didn't take it that way. In fact, it had the exact opposite effect, because telling people not to look into something is one of the fastest ways to make them want to investigate even more. And that's exactly what happened here, because instead of calming the situation, it intensified it, with users across platforms asking the same question. Why stop people from asking questions, especially when the situation was already surrounded by uncertainty and debate? And this is where psychology really comes into play, because once people feel like information is being restricted, though they automatically start assuming there's something worth hiding, even if that isn't actually the case. And that's what turned a lot of neutral viewers into active skeptics, because now the conversation wasn't just about grief, timing, or behavior anymore. It became about access to truth, about whether the public was being told everything, and whether there were details missing from the official narrative. And again, none of these conclusions are confirmed, but the feeling of being told "don't look here" is powerful enough to drive entire online movements. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. At the same time, there's another side to this that some people are pointing out, that warnings like this could be about safety, privacy, or preventing misinformation from spreading, especially in emotionally charged situations. But the problem is, once the message is out there, it gets interpreted in different ways by different audiences. And in a viral environment, the most suspicious interpretation tends to spread the fastest because it creates more engagement, more debate, and more attention. And that's why this single moment, this "don't investigate" message, ended up becoming one of the most talked about parts of the entire story, because it didn't shut anything down. It opened everything up even further. And now everything circles back to where this story stands today. Because what started as clips, opinions, and online debates has officially crossed into something much bigger, a legal battle. And that changes the entire landscape. Because once Erika Kirk moves forward with a lawsuit against a private investigator, the conversation is no longer just about what people think. It becomes about what can actually be proven, challenged, and defended in a legal setting. And that's a completely different level of scrutiny, because courts don't operate on viral clips or internet theories. They require evidence, documentation, and clear arguments. And that's why this moment feels like a turning point. Because for the first time, there's potential for the narrative to shift away from speculation and towards something more concrete. But at the same time, this move raises just as many questions as it answers, because people are now watching closely to see what comes out of it. Will the lawsuit clarify the situation and shut down the rumors? Or will it bring even more details into the spotlight that fuel the controversy further? Because legal cases have a way of doing both, depending on how they unfold. And that's why attention around this story is only increasing, not decreasing, because now there's a new layer added to everything that came before it. From the grief video debate, to the timing questions, to the warnings about investigating, all of it now sits in the background of a developing legal situation that could either validate one side or completely reshape the entire narrative. And this is exactly why people are still locked in, because at its core, this story has become more than just one controversy. It's a mix of public perception, unanswered questions, and now potential legal consequences, all unfolding in real time. And until there's a clear outcome, the conversation isn't going anywhere because in situations like this, the final chapter doesn't get written by the internet. It gets written by what actually comes out when everything is put to the test. And now it's your turn. Because after everything, these claims, the clips, the reactions, and now the lawsuit involving Erika Kirk, this story has officially reached a point where the internet is split. And the real question is simple. What do you believe? Is this a case of online speculation going way too far? Or do you think there are still pieces of the story that haven't been fully revealed yet? Because right now, both sides are louder than ever. And until something concrete comes out, the debate isn't slowing down anytime soon. So don't just watch. Jump into it. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now because I'm reading everything and I want to know exactly where you stand. Hit. Like if you want more deep, real breakdowns like this. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update, because if anything new drops in this case, you already know we're covering it immediately. And share this video with someone who's been following this story too, because the more people paying attention, the harder it is for any narrative to stay one-sided. Stay locked in, because this situation, it's far from over. Hashtag Erika Kirk, hashtag lawsuit, hashtag viral debate, hashtag comment now, hashtag stay tuned, hashtag breaking story, hashtag US audience at Erika Kirk, at YouTube, trending at viral, now at debate now, at social buzz.